Hi everyone, so I'm going to do a lit chat, a book review. I haven't done one of these in a really long time because I've been reading so many books that I just didn't have time to film reviews on all of them. I've actually been reading a lot of really good books that I have reviewed on Goodreads, so I'll link my profile below. And I actually like to review all the books that I do read. I review some of them briefly and some more in depth on that site. For this one, I wanted to review The Hunger Games because I initially read this whole trilogy, I think it was like a year ago, and I just basically reviewed the first book, so that one doesn't have any spoilers. So if you haven't read the trilogy and you're really interested in learning more about The Hunger Games and what I think of it, I would actually recommend you go check out that video. I will link it like somewhere here, because this one is going to be talking about all the three books in detail and there are going to be spoilers in it. I absolutely loved this trilogy. This is definitely one of the most engaging books that I read in a while, and the reason I decided to reread them because of the the movie trailer that just came out, because the movie's coming out in March, and the movie trailer looks so good. I'm really excited because it looks like they're doing a really good job with it and translating the whole books to screen, so I can't wait to see it. And that kind of made me want to reread the whole books. The thing is that I had just as much fun reading them the second time around as I did the first time, which was something that totally took me by surprise because I don't usually reread books a second time. All the characters were very well developed. I think that's one of the strongest parts of the Hunger Games trilogy, is that the characters really come to life. And I have read so many dystopia novels after the Hunger Games. This was kind of like the trilogy that got me into dystopia. So I just, was reading dystopia after dystopia book. And a lot of these books, some of them are really good as well, but I found a lot of them just very flat. Like the characters are very just one-dimensional. They aren't developed very well. And I think that's what really set the standard really high in the Hunger Games, is that the main characters, but also a lot of the supporting characters, they bring so much to the story, and the characters really develop in the second and third books, so they don't stay the same. And I liked the whole cast of side characters. They weren't just superfluous to the story. Like, I think they actually showed different dimensions of Panem, like Greasy Say and the whole Hob community. I thought that was like a really colorful addition to the whole story. Also Haymitch, how he's like a drunk and he's probably been affected, so like he probably is traumatized by his own experience, so he turns into like a lifelong drunk. And the stories of the Avoxes and who else? Rue, of course, is another really central character. And all these characters, I think they add so much to the story. They're not just thrown in for no purpose. All the characters in this trilogy seem to have an important role to play. The only character that I was a little bit disappointed with is Prim, because Prim, as you know, plays a very central role, especially in the third book. And of course in the first one too, because Katniss takes her place. But that was the only character that I felt we didn't really learn a lot about Prim. And also, Katniss obviously loves her sister and is very devoted to her, but there was actually very little interaction between Katniss and Prim. The other thing that I really liked about this whole trilogy was that the love story was not cliche. A lot of these love stories, especially in young adult fiction, these kind of very cliche love triangles, they always kind of have the same root, and it's always like the main male protagonists are always they all kind of are described in a very similar manner. They're always really hot and good looking, and they have lots of muscles, and it's just, I felt like in the trilogy, The Hunger Games, the love story wasn't quite as obvious, especially between Peeta and Katniss, because in the beginning she almost has like an outright disdain for Peeta. Like, she's kind of avoiding him completely, and she doesn't really want anything to do with him. And obviously that changes as the story goes on. And I think that was really cool because the love story actually develops. Like, they go from being completely apart to forming a really close bond, and that doesn't just happen overnight. It actually happens over the length of 3 books. And I think that's something that I wish more young adult authors would do that, because I feel like in a lot of these YA dystopia, like some male character just appears, he's super hot, and then the next moment they're like falling in love. And also how each the male protagonists, like Rue or how Gale and Peeta were very different people. They weren't just like two random hot guys. They each filled a different role in Katniss's life, and I think that was really well developed as well. My favorite book of the whole trilogy was probably the first one, just because it was so different. Like, I mean, it was just, you know, right away I got sucked into this whole world. I thought the world building of the whole trilogy was awesome. The author, she definitely spent a lot of time talking about Panem and the different districts, and we learned a lot about this world, and that's something that is also not, you know, in some of these dystopia fictions. I think that's something that's really important, because we want to learn about this world. We want to know why is it so screwed up, and these injustices and stuff, and it seemed very, very well developed. You know, I had a complete understanding of Panem and, you know, the capital and stuff like that, and I think that was what made it really interesting, how in the book one, the first part is learning just about this world, but it's not done in a really boring way. Like, it's engaging, and then obviously the actual Hunger Games were thrilling, you know, extremely fast-paced, and a really good mix of tragedy and triumph. And of course the scenes in the cave with Peeta were so heartbreaking, and with Rue and stuff like that. The second book I felt was a little bit slow in the beginning, you know, because we knew that like the revolution or the unrest in the districts and stuff like that was starting to happen, but I felt it was like a little bit slow, and then when she had to go back in the arena, I was kind of like, oh god, this whole thing all over again. So I mean, the second book, when they were actually in the arena with the other victors, that part was a lot shorter, obviously, than the first one. So that was good. How she didn't drag it on too much, which was good. And then they get rescued and stuff. The third book was obviously the one that a lot of people are in dispute about. Like, some people really, really like it, and some people are really disappointed by it. And I'm overall pleased with the third book. I think it's a good way how to end the story, because the third book is really about civil war and about, you know, tragedy. It's realistic in the sense that it would be stupid if the ending was all like fairy tale happy and everyone goes home and has a wonderful life and lives out their whole days, you know, in the lap of luxury. I think that would just be completely unrealistic. So I feel like the author made a good choice, and, you know, having some triumphs, like some personal triumphs, but there was obviously sacrifices and bad things that happened, like the death of Prim, and, you know, how Katniss is emotionally completely scarred. Like, who wouldn't be after everything that happened to her? I thought that was kind of a good, realistic portrayal of the aftermath of war. And also how the character of Gale, how he changed, like the kind of transition from Gale, you know, from just being a best friend to being one of the leaders in the revolution, and how that affected their friendship, like how they kind of grew apart. So obviously that was sad, you know, because I was kind of rooting for Gale, but I think it was, yeah, it was just, it was realistic, again, because sometimes that happens, you know, friendships change, and sometimes our friends do things that hurt us. It also gave a good look at the manipulation of propaganda in war, like how that can really affect the experience of the people, like, you know, because she was, Katniss was basically a tool of propaganda for the cause of the rebels, and how, you know, before she'd be kind of been manipulated in the Hunger Games, but then later she was manipulated by the rebels. So she was kind of a pawn in both times, like even before the revolution and after, and then she learns how Coin is actually, you know, she's not actually trying to change anything, she just wants to take power. So I thought it was cool how in the end, you know, she kills Coin instead of Snow. I thought that was a good ending. That was smart. It was like a smart ending. The only thing is that I felt the ending was a little bit rushed, because we had grown so close. I mean, I'd become really attached to these characters, especially Gale and Peeta, and, you know, because Peeta is hijacked at the end and he's kind of going crazy. And then Peeta just suddenly reappears. Like, she goes back to District 12 and she lives this kind of very lonely life, and she's kind of in the middle of depression, I guess. And then Peeta just comes back. And for me, that didn't really make sense, because before in Mockingjay it'd been said that, you know, this was probably gonna last forever and there was no way to bring him out of this hijacking, and then suddenly he's back. Like, yes, he still has flashbacks, but he's like kind of a normal human being again. So that really wasn't explained very well. Like, it just seemed kind of rushed, like how suddenly he's there. And also Gale, you know, the last interaction between Gale and Katniss is when she asks him about, oh, is it your bomb that killed my sister? And he says, oh, what does it matter? That's what you'll always think anyway. So, and that's the last interaction they have. So then she finds out from, I think, Greasy Say that he's like off in another district. I didn't mind that she didn't end up with Gale. Like, I don't think I should judge the book on, oh, she didn't end up with Gale and now the book is not good, you know? That would be very simplistic, but I kind of wish that there had been more of a resolution between them, because the whole, like, when Gale goes away and they part ways, like, it was like one sentence or two sentences or something, and it kind of just left me wondering, you know, about how she feels about Gale now. And, you know, she says that, oh, she felt relief, but I don't know, I just felt like that could have been explored a bit more. And also how, in the end, especially in the epilogue, she ends up, you know, settling down with Peeta and she has children with him. But I actually wanted Katniss to physically, or, you know, actually choose Peeta, because she goes back to District 12 on her own, while Peeta is probably still locked up in that mental place because he's still hijacked. And Peeta kind of comes back to her. So she never actually chooses Peeta, and I kind of wanted her to say to Peeta, like, I love you, come back with me, I need you, because, you know, you're the dandelion in the spring for me and all this stuff. But it kind of just works out that he kind of comes back and then she just kind of settles for him. So I was a little bit disappointed in that as well. I don't know, maybe that's just the way that I interpreted it. Overall, I did like how Mockingjay ended, because, you know, I think it's realistic to have an ending that isn't sugary coated sweet, and that's what I really don't like about YA fiction, is that sometimes the authors think that, you know, just because it's a younger audience that they have to make everything like Walt Disney ending, and that's just so, just not giving any credit to the reader. But, you know, that's normal. That's how things are after war, you know. Some things can be reconstructed, but these lasting scars, like emotional scars, they're not just gonna go away. I don't think it's really geared only towards young adults, because I know a lot of adults who've read them and have loved them completely. So I am so excited for the movie. I think the cast is awesome. I think they did a really good job with picking Katniss, because I actually saw a video with a movie with Jennifer Lawrence. I think it's called Winter Bones, and she was a fantastic actress in that movie. So I think she's going to do a really good job as Katniss, and I think the two main leads of Gale and Peeta are, I think they could pull it off. Like, it wasn't initially how I had pictured them, but now that I've seen the trailer, like, I think yes, like they can totally be Gale and Peeta. And I know Lenny Kravitz is going to be Cinna, and I think that is going to be really interesting. So that's my overall thoughts on The Hunger Games. If you want to review the whole trilogy as well, you can leave it as a video response. And thanks so much for watching, and yeah, I'll try and do more lit chats every once in a while, and in the meanwhile, follow me on Goodreads. I'll link it below. And that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.